If you guys have watched any of my tournament sets or watched any of the sets I play online for my channel, you'll notice the majority of the damage I get is from winning neutral. And that's not a coincidence. The nuances of spacing is something I've developed over almost a decade, and I'm going to teach everything I know to you in this chapter. I'm going to show you exactly how I choose which attacks I use in neutral and why, so definitely take notes. In the last Pokken Basics, I described what footsies are: space control mid-screen. And I also went over the 3 goals of footsies, which are pushing the opponent to the corner, avoiding mix-ups, and getting a hard knockdown or air reset. Before you ever throw out an attack, make sure it's either to accomplish one of these 3 goals, or it's to get a whiff punish, which I'll talk about next chapter. One of the easiest ways to achieve these 3 goals, though not always the best, is through the use of preemptive attacks. Preemptive attacks are simply attacks done in advance of or before an opponent's action. You're not waiting for a dash or a whiffed attack. You're trying to prevent or stop that action before it happens by sticking out your own move to interrupt them. So if the opponent is walking up to you and they haven't yet committed to anything unsafe, or if you want to immediately take control of the space on screen, that's when you might throw out a preemptive attack. Any move can be used as a preemptive attack, but here are 5 properties to consider when you're looking for a move that you can just throw out there. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you examples of excellent preemptive attacks with every single character in the game, so you have something concrete and valuable to take away from this video. Okay, so write these 5 down. You want to consider speed, range, height, safety, and damage. Now I'm going to go over all 5. First is speed. If 2 attacks are pressed on the same frame, the one with the faster startup gets a hitbox first. So if they hit at the same height, and neither move has armor, then the faster move will win. If you want to know more about frame data and height, check out chapter 4 of Pokken Basics. Range is important because no matter how fast a move is, it can be beaten out by moves that outreach it. In general, moves that have more reach are slower, and moves that are really fast have less reach. This is not always the case, but it is a trend that goes across different fighting games. So Lucario's 2Y is a super fast move you can just throw out, and I'll be using it in a few examples. But even though it's fast at 11 frames, Shadow Mewtwo 6X outreaches it. So if they're pressed at the same time, the 2Y will whiff, and the 6X will make contact, and Shadow Mewtwo gets a full confirm off of that. Height is important because it allows you to use a slower move or a move with less range to beat a faster move or one with more range than your own. For example, Shadow Mewtwo 6X goes farther and comes out faster than Blaziken's 8X. But if they're used at the same time, Blaziken's 8X will win because it is invincible against mid-lows starting frame 9 all the way until it is active. 6X is a mid-low. Now, ideally, you want to be poking only with mids because they don't lose any height interactions, but there are very few true mids in the game. There are a lot of highs, lows, mid-highs, but very few true mids, and the ones that do exist don't generally go far enough or they're not fast enough to poke with. So just know that because of the height properties in poking, every time you throw out an attack preemptively, there's a risk that the opponent might avoid it because of its height. So know the properties of your opponent's best pokes and try to use moves that can counter their height. So against Blaziken, for example, you don't want to be throwing out too many mid-lows or lows. But you can throw out highs or even projectiles that are mids because Blaziken doesn't have any good lows or ducking low stance to avoid them. And you don't really have to worry about it preemptively using 8Y because it has no range and it starts up extremely slowly. The 4th property to consider is safety. Safety applies to frame data on block, its recovery, and how safe it is against armor, which is trial and error, but is very important. Here are some examples of relatively safe preemptive attacks: Lucario's 2Y, Aegislash 4Y, Pikachu's 5X, and Darkrai's 6X. All of these moves are negative on block, but they are safe and cannot be punished. Actually, keep that in mind. The majority of attacks in the game are negative on block. So the key is just to use a move that is still safe. Now, almost all of these moves, aside from Aegislash's 4Y, do good pushback, meaning the opponent is not in range to throw you and often not in range to strike back with any of their fastest moves. All of these moves either recover super fast or have disjointed hitboxes, meaning the hitbox is at the tip of the move, but the hurt box, where you can actually get hit by an opponent's hitbox, is way back at your character's model. This means even if you strike into an attack that's already active, you'll still win, and at the very least, you won't take damage. And it makes it almost impossible to whiff punish you. Fast recovery means the attack retracts quickly, so you can often poke into a counterattack that is charging and still be safe. In Lucario's case that's true, but Pikachu and Darkrai, they're mostly safe because of their disjointed hitboxes. So to summarize safety, you want a move that is safe on block, recovers quickly, and is safe against armor. You might not accomplish all of these with your normal, but as many as you can. I'll go more into armor in the upcoming videos, but just keep that in mind. The final property to consider in Footsies is damage. Now depending on your playstyle, this might be the most important or the least important. I don't like taking big risks in neutral, it's not my style. I like consistency, I don't like volatility. So I tend to use moves, like I mentioned earlier, that are safe, but don't necessarily lead to a lot of damage. But sometimes this gets me in trouble because, and you'll notice this because the games that I lose, this is usually how it happens, I hit the opponent more times, but they're doing more damage per hit. So for example, against Aegislash, let's say I land 2 YY into Zen Headbutt twice in neutral. And that's good, the move is safe. But what if Aegislash doesn't care about safety and just sits half screen 6x and they land both the just frames? That move is negative 16 on block, it's not safe. But it does so much damage that it's literally twice as dangerous as landing Shadow Mewtwo safer confirms in neutral. So you'll see characters like Machamp, Blastoise, Chandelure poking with moves that are not necessarily safe, but they do so much damage that the player doesn't even care. So it's a playstyle choice if you want to focus on damage. But really keep it in mind, because say you're Lucario, 2Y is good. But unless you're whiff punishing with it, it only does 30 damage every time you land it. If you're using it preemptively, you're going to have to land it 9 times to match the amount of damage Sharp Aegislash gets from 6x, even though it's unsafe. Okay, so knowing all this, what moves should you be poking with? Well, I'm going to show you a montage of some good pokes with every character in the game while I summarize the 5 properties I just talked about. I'm going to be throwing in some projectiles, but not too many, since we're going to make a separate video on those. You want moves that are fast, have good range, have good height properties, so ideally mid, but since those are rare, just height properties that are good against your opponent's best options. You want moves that are safe on both block and on armor. If a move is special cancelable, that helps a lot with safety against armor. And you want to consider how much damage the attack does. The more the better, but usually the more damage, the less safe it is in neutral. Now, there are always exceptions. So that's how I choose my attacks, and this method has been very effective for me. Always remember, when you're poking, be deliberate. Stick to the 3 goals: push to the wall, avoid mix-ups, or look to fish for that knockdown or air reset. Don't toss out moves unless you think they'll make contact or unless they recover super fast, because doing this leaves you susceptible to reactive attacks or whiff punishing, which is what the next video is going to be all about. Making your opponent's preemptive moves miss the mark and attacking them in their recovery before they can block again. This is a tactic that every player needs to master, and it is especially helpful if your opponent has superior normals. Like I've said before, whiff punishing in footsies is my favorite part of fighting games, so I hope you found this valuable, and I hope you use some of these actionable strategies in your next matches. I'm looking forward to teaching you even more about footsies, specifically whiff punishing, in the next chapter. Thanks for watching, see you soon.